Welcome to Corks and Conversation with Halley Sutton.
It's going to be a great episode. We're so excited about this. Halley is a debut author whose book, right underneath my paper here, The Lady Upstairs, best cover of the year, I'm telling you. Right? If you can't see us, it's just go out and buy it. It's really sexy. It's really good. Her book was published in just a few weeks ago in November and has shot right to the top of some pretty important lists. And we're super excited for her.
Yes. And we'll have a lot to talk about. But first, let me give a little background. Halley Sutton is a writer and editor who lives in Los Angeles. She is a Pitch Wars mentor and holds a master's degree in writing from Otis College of Art and Design. The Lady Upstairs is her debut novel. And we got an awesome description here. It's once in a blue moon, a fresh literary voice emerges, fully mature and perfectly suited for the cultural moment. This time, it belongs to Halley Sutton, whose extraordinary debut, The Lady Upstairs, takes a close look at female power and revenge as it reinvents the noir crime genre. And in case you think that's all just talk, the Washington Post listed her novel in an article entitled Love Suspense. Here are 5 new thrillers that will have you at the edge of your seat. And guess who else was on that list? S.J. Rosen and Michael Connelly. So we're talking great. And if that wasn't enough already, it's been optioned for television by Sony TV. So Halley, it is so nice to talk to you today.
It is so nice to be here. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Cathi. I am going to replay that blurb on end whenever I need a little.
For having a bad day.
Was beautiful. Yeah. Like, someone believes in me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think more than someone.
Yeah.
Pretty
yes.
Great.
So before we get into all the big questions and stuff, Cathi, why don't you tell us what wine we chose for today?
Of course. I'll show you here if you're on YouTube with us. This is so Halley likes a Zinfandel, which we have to agree with for wholeheartedly. And so we suggested the Bogle Vineyards Old Vine Zinfandel right from Halley's neighborhood in California. And it's the reason I thought it would be a good one is that it's something we can all get, and it's an affordable wine within our under $20, but we can all get it in all the different areas we're in: Florida, South Dakota, and California. So as Christy's taken a taste, Halley's got some other work to do, so she's going to enjoy hers later.
Yeah.
The tasting notes, I kind of dig these tasting notes. Halley, we read tasting notes all the time, and some of them are we always want to know who's writing these because they're just
it's
very dramatic.
It's the best creative writing. It's like a hint of gravel and stuff.
Yeah, and mushroom spiced with latte.
So evocative.
This one's just nuts and bolts, man.
I mean, it was just bullet points. I was like, oh my gosh, you love it? I'm gonna solicit them. I'm gonna get paid to write one of those tasting notes. I'm thinking this is fun. We know how to do it now.
I like this one. So this one says it's the Zinfandel is barrel aged in American oak for 12 months. Raspberries, peppercorns, juniper, dried herbs, and vanilla. Not a verb to be found.
Nope.
Oh.
And I don't know what juniper tastes like. So
well, like gin. Like juniper berries.
Oh.
Christmas
Good
trees.
to know.
Yeah. So that's not bad. Okay. So the wine's delicious. Halley, you'll love it later. All good. Okay, so we were coming up with our questions we wanted to talk to you about. And the only thing I could think about starting with is Joe, your main character.
Oh.
I mean, okay, listen. From about the, 13th second you're into this book, you just realize that this is not a protagonist like any other protagonist that you know, okay? She has some questionable morals, perhaps. Okay, she does. Very questionable morals. But yet she's devoted to her coworker, this friend, Lou. Joe has been wronged very badly in the past. She's not afraid of retribution, little violence, right? She's unapologetic. She's self-destructive. I was making a list here. Go on. But here's the thing. Halley makes the reader root for her. all those things, those qualities I just said, you just want her to succeed so badly. So I want to know, A, how did you do that, one writer to another? And then 2, how did Joe come to you? Like, talk to us about Joe.
Sure. So thank you so much. Joe is by far my favorite part of the book. And I think the reason that I felt like I had been writing for a long time before I kind of embarked on writing this book. And the reason that I kind of felt like it was a novel was because I knew I wanted to spend time with Joe, that she has all of these qualities that are not always great. You did such a nice job of describing her. Other people have described her more strongly and less terms. But she felt very distinct to me. And so I knew that I kind of wanted to spend like at least a book length amount of time with her. And as for how, I mean, essentially we're kind of talking about the question of like likability, which I think somehow gets thrown around, particularly for women, as if a character has to be likable to be somebody you want to spend a book with. But I think that there's something about somebody being a very distinct character that propels that, even if they're not likable. Like my hope for anybody reading the book, whether or not you like Joe, is that she feels like a very specific person. And I think when somebody does feel that way, that the reader is willing to follow them and give them more latitude, and then hopefully find little things to pick up along the way that keep them rooting for the character. Like, as you pointed out, one of Joe's really big driving forces is her attachment to Lou. And I think that that's something that's easy to relate to, even if you're not relating with some of the things that she does with the women she works with, or the way that she, you know, traps bad men. And then what is the line of what bad, you know, like, but I think it's that, keeping her with a sense of humor, I think, will keep readers along with you. As for how she kind of came to me, you know, writers talk about like characters coming to them fully formed, and that wasn't necessarily how I felt about her, but her voice was very immediate and sharp. I had this idea, I was writing a short story. I recently had my heart broken, and so I was very over men. And I was writing the short story about, I wonder how many writers' books start with something like that.
Right, exactly.
You know?
I'm actually, I hate to say this, but I'm kind of glad that happened to you, because this turned out really well.
You know, I hope he reads it and regrets. No,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm channeling Adele right now, because she's had quite a good career.
Yeah, exactly. It works for a lot of people. So I just had this scene in my head of this woman, these two women at a diner, and one was saying, I'm so in love with this man, I can't get over him. I just, you know, he's my life. And then there was a person sitting across from her, a woman who said, I don't know if we tolerate swearing on the podcast.
Oh, we do. Yeah.
Okay, good. I've been tiptoeing. So the woman across the diner table from her said, that's horseshit. You don't need him. Let's destroy him. And I was just immediately like, this person, I like this person.
I like you better. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it made me laugh, and it was kind of this really strong voice. And the more I kind of tried to lean into that voice, the more Joe just like became this person who felt very real.
Very cool.
That is so cool. I love that. You know, I had read a few reviews about them. They talked about, they labeled it a feminist noir, or she's a feminist femme fatale. What do you think about that label? Did you have that in your brain, and what's your thought about that?
I think that's, thank you for asking, because that is a question that I have kicked around a lot in my head, because I think it's a thorny issue. What Joe and Lou are doing with their blackmail agency for the lady upstairs is blackmailing bad men. Which you could make an argument is feminist as a way to reclaim power. But the way that they're doing it is essentially by using other women. So that is for sure not very feminist. So that I guess for me, where I wanted the book to feel feminist was centering a character that's an archetype in noir, the femme fatale. Like, what if she's a literal person? She's not just this projection of male kind of anxiety, which is what usually the femme fatale is in classic noir. What if she has hopes and dreams and aspirations of her own? And then the second part is that I don't think you have to be a perfect feminist or a perfect female to deserve to have your story told. And I think that that's where I wanted to go with Joe too, and to raise those questions of like, where is the line here? She's doing something maybe that's about reclaiming power and agency, but it is also not a good thing, and it spirals out of control pretty quickly within the novel.
I think that's really interesting because, you know, that label is one of those really strong labels. And like you say, there's elements of feminism in here, but not every piece of it applies.
Right.
You know, so that label can be, and so I love how you embrace that. That's so feminist. Femme fatale has got a pretty awesome ring to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I haven't read a lot of noir crime fiction. I really enjoyed this. I'm not sure because I, you know, I would love to have your kind of definition of noir, because I know it was very popular back in the 50s, and of course that's all men. So of course it wasn't feminist. I'm not sure. I never have read that much of that, but I think it's really kind of a cool genre, and I want to know more about it. I think our listeners would, and also, you know, how you ended up writing it.
So I would say noir for me, the definition that I fall back on is kind of like that old, you know, definition of pornography, where it's, you know it when you see it. Noir, noir is so much about posture and attitude. And, you know, there's the tropes of it, the private detective, the lone wolf. He usually has a drinking problem, but it somehow makes him smarter in this like bizarre way that is never accurate to reality. And there's the femme fatale, you know, the woman who's dangerous. There's all these,
she comes into the like detective agency. Is that the
right,
noir
slinks
thing?
in
Okay.
and, you know, is the call to adventure, but he knows it's also going to destroy him. And, you know, just all the kind of very classical tropes of noir. But I think noir at heart is really kind of often about not even just crime, but kind of systemic imbalances, and kind of that when you pull away the things that we have veneered on top of society to make it livable and to make it positive, that there are often these dark threads that run through it. And I think that even a lot of the classic noir touches on that. I think it's the disillusionment after World War I and the like uncovering corruption in the police force, or, you know, in the mayor's office, or whatever it may be. Or and I think that that is what makes noir still really relevant today, is that unfortunately we haven't rooted all of that out. And for me, writing like a feminist noir about it felt very much like, I mean, that's kind of what the Me Too movement is all about, right? Is the kind of unmasking of those systemic predators. So it was like, let's write a noir about this.
Right.
I mean,
now,
like
so is this what they call, is this, because I've read the term neo-noir now, and I'm like, is this neo-noir then?
It would definitely be neo-noir. It's, you know, it's meant to be set more present day, kind of a neo-noir. And the second part of your question that I didn't answer was that I actually didn't consciously decide to make this a noir book until I moved to Los Angeles, which has such like a deep history of noir. And it kind of became a way both to give my book structure so that I would kind of understand better. It was like I had Jo's voice in my head, but then making her a literal femme fatale with like an agency came about as like a way to make it a noir. But it was also like, I didn't understand Los Angeles at all. And I don't know that I do now, but it was a way to kind of like get deeper into the city, because it has this history of, you know, film noir and, you know, a history of corruption in different places. And so it was like, oh, maybe that'll teach me about this new place I've moved.
So did you go and like research all these different places? And because it feels like you've lived there forever, you know, in the book. But
thank you. I definitely did. I would do, I don't know how familiar either one of you are with Los Angeles, but
just been there for, actually I did live there for like 6 months, but that was a really long time ago.
But I mean, so you know, the thing that I wasn't really aware of until I moved there, which is like how neighborhoody it all is.
Yeah.
So place to place varies so much. And yeah, so like one weekend I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go explore Koreatown. And then I'd just like go wander around Koreatown. I'd pick different places to go. And then the other thing I did as research was I did a lot of murder bus tours, which will the mythology of the city. And I loved those. Those are so fun. I miss them.
All right, Cathi, we're going out there and Hallie's going to take us on a murder tour.
I would be glad to do it. I even did it one weekend early in quarantine, my quarantine pod, which are like my roommates. And then I have a friend across the street. I decided to put together my own murder bus tour, and we just carried different cars, and like I would call them and like give the little history spiel, and then we would go to the next stop.
Perfect.
It was so
Oh,
fun.
I love that stuff. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's there's so much of the Me Too movement that was in LA and Hollywood. And so I just feel
Mhm.
like your book is bridging so many things. So I can kind of see Hallie's tour of all these things. It's like a whole what is that? Cottage industry for you.
Yes, exactly. If this whole writer shebang thing doesn't work out.
Yeah.
I know. I've thought of that
Just so
too.
you can do the tours.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had some very good information, but I am dying. So it's our little segue. We do a little midway segue. And we ask everyone we talk to a question in the bottle. Probably just like a question that maybe you've gotten to at the bottom of the bottle, kind of those you would discuss with your pod.
Yes.
And if you don't like it, we'll pass and pick another.
Okay.
Christy, what do you
Okay.
got?
All right. It is. If you could be a member of any TV family, which would you pick?
Any TV family. The Sopranos.
Love that. Halley, are you Italian originally?
I am not, but I'm
Oh.
fascinated by all of that. I spent my New Year's lying in bed watching a bunch of different like Casino and Goodfellas. So
Great. Oh, that's great. Well, hopefully it ends, it ends okay for you. Like you're, able to.
I would rather not get whacked. Yes.
Yeah, don't get whacked.
Maybe break that for yourself.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Okay, so on with the questions. I actually took part in Pitch Wars a couple years ago. I didn't get chosen for that round, but I remember thinking this is such a great idea. And I was wondering if you could talk a little about your experience with Pitch Wars.
Yeah, and I know nothing about it because I don't. Twitter is not my world yet. So
yeah. Fair enough. Twitter can be amazing and Twitter can be a garbage fire. So, it's.
Well, I think that's how I got introduced to Twitter was through that. It was like a couple years ago, and I was like, "Oh, they have something where you can pitch online and do this." So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, okay. So a little overview of Pitch Wars, which is that Pitch Wars is an online mentoring program. It happens once a year. And people volunteer their time. It's writers. It's usually writers. I think in the past they've also had editors or maybe even agents, but they volunteer their time as a mentor, and they kind of put out a wish list of the type of books that they would like to work with, like the same as you would if you were an agent or editor. And people apply to work with one of them, people who have a finished manuscript that they know they need to revise or they know they need to get kind of pushed further along. And every mentor picks one person to work with. Occasionally they can pick two, but generally it's just one. And they help them revise that book over the course of 3 or 4 months. And then at the end of it, there's this showcase for agents that kind of gives you like a leg up to pitching agents. And along the way, they have other things like PitMad, where you can pitch your book over Twitter and agents are looking at it. And it's just kind of a way to kind of break through the noise of querying, which can be so lonely and so difficult, and definitely have had that experience too. So back in 2018, I had a completed draft of The Lady Upstairs, and I had worked it over a couple of different times. And I had started querying, and I had gotten some initial interest and then a lot of passes. And then I got this great feedback from an agent who passed, said she would read it again, but she had like 8 paragraphs of feedback about what she liked and didn't like about the book. And it was like the nicest thing to get, because it like so often what you get from agents is just like, not right for me, thank you, which is totally valid, but you can't revise anything off of that. So I got all this great feedback from this agent, Sharon Pelletier, and I was like, okay, great. So I know I need to revise my book, but I don't know how. I've kind of done as much as I know how to do with this book, but she has all these good points and I totally see the value in it. And I just am kind of not sure how best to implement that. So that led me to Pitch Wars. And in addition, what kind of sparked my interest was I was looking through all the mentors that year, and there was a mentor, a woman named Lane Fargo, and I had seen her book come across in Publishers Lunch, which are kind of the daily updates about people who have sold books and to where, and it was described as a workplace noir, and it was about it was her debut novel, Temper. It was about these kind of psychosexual dynamics at a theater production company, strong as lead. And I was like, yes, like this, I can't wait to read this book. And how amazing would it be to work with this person? So I applied to her along with a couple of other people for Pitch Wars 2018. And I actually ended up getting picked by Lane, which was amazing. And she really helped me transform my book in the course of 3 to 4 months. And it, like, I look back on it and it was just such an amazing experience. We did so much to the book, and I only had one mental breakdown where I was just, you know, sobbing on my bed, like, I can't do it. But it was such a great, it was just such a great opportunity, such a huge help. I don't think the book would have been published. I know the book wouldn't have been published without Lane really taking me in hand and saying, like, okay, you don't have a midpoint. And I was like, that's great. What is a midpoint?
You're right.
Absolutely. You're right. I don't. So she really she turned me on to Save the Cat Writes a Novel. She helped me kind of like chart my plot and just, made me a better writer. And now we're really good friends. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's been amazing.
Is that how you got your agent too? Or
it is. So I was in the agent showcase, and actually Sharon Pelletier, the one who'd given me such good feedback, to see the book again. And then within 2 weeks, was like, I'd love to represent you. This is
oh, wonderful. You know, I got
what
chills.
An amazing experience for you, for the mentee, but what a generous thing for the mentors to do.
Unbelievably generous. And, you know, I have really felt a call to give that back because that is such a huge help. So for the last 2 years, 2019, and then this year, Lane and I have been co-mentors, and we've actually worked on 2 different books. So we're in the middle of working on one right now that I'm really excited about. She's a phenomenal author.
Well, you're like the mentor of how this industry works and should work. You know, like, I received this help, I'm bringing it back. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very cool. So you had told some of the story in an interview with Neil Nyren.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Christie and I got to meet at Thriller Fest, and he's just such a generous guy. And so
he is.
Well, he was at Sleuth Fest too. He's always there.
He's just everywhere. But anyway, it talked about, you had said, I think, like something like, I just had no idea how much revision I would be doing on this book. And I'm revising right now, and I am struggling. Like, I just can't believe how much I have to read. Like, it's just as daunting. I have to kind of, like, I had to have that come to Jesus moment where it's like, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So I would love to know what your thoughts are on revision in general, and what you've learned, like what you would do different next time, or when you, I don't know.
Well, first of all, exciting to be revising and in the revision stage. And I would love to hear more about both of your projects as writers. So revision, so I went to grad school, which is why I moved to LA. And it has always bummed me out. I had a great experience at grad school. I had so much help from professors. I had, you know, a really great group of peers to like workshop with, but no one teaches you how to revise. And I think that's like the most important part of writing. And I know that it's more individual than just being able to say, take this one method and do it. But it would have been really helpful if I had ever had somebody who were like, here were some strategies. So it is something I love to talk about, because I'm like, we should all just be talking about this
all the time.
All the time.
I know. That was the first big shocker after finishing the book. It's like, what?
Right. And you're like, I have to do this again. Yeah.
Again and again and again.
Again and again and again. Yeah. And so, so for me, my personal revision journey was, you know, I did a couple of revisions of the novel before Pitch Wars, and I thought that that's what revising was. And then I got to Pitch Wars and I was like, oh no, this is revising. Like, we broke the book in so many places to make it better. But, you know, I probably over the course of 3 to 4 months wrote like 40,000 new words for the book. It was crazy. And then I revised again, like 2 or 3 rounds with my agent before we took it on sub. And then I sold the book, and I revised, I think 3 different times with my editor. So it was like, it was just, and it was one of those things where I was almost glad I didn't know how much revision was ahead of me. I would have been like, that's crazy. There's no way.
Stop listening.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think every time we did it, it made it better. But I think some of the strategies for me that really worked for revision was, I do think you have to take time away from the book. You know, you have to be able to see it with fresh eyes. And so one of the first things I do when I'm revising a book after like an early draft of it, is I put it away for a little bit and then I try to read it through, and I just try to make as many kind of like pragmatic notes as I can. Why does she do this now? Why does this happen on this day? Like just kind of trying to like puncture holes in my storytelling to make it like the foundation as solid as possible. I don't worry about like how pretty the words are yet, or if this like symbolism matches. It's basically just like, is the foundation for the house strong? Can we keep building, or do we have to go back? And so that's kind of the first pass. And then later what I get to, and so I just kind of try to ask myself as many questions as I can. And often I'll do this just kind of, I'll print it out and I'll just write it in pen on the side. And then I have to go back eventually and answer all of those questions. And maybe on a second read, I realize that maybe like a couple of those questions aren't, you can toss them out. They're like, okay, that's minor, but like I need to be able to answer all of those questions, particularly because if you're working with an editor and they ask you, you know, I did have a couple of things. I'm sorry, I feel like all of my answers are super long-winded.
No,
talk to new people.
No, it's very interesting. We're fascinated.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did have a couple of things. I remember I sent it to my editor that I was like, in the back of my mind, I knew it didn't make sense, but I was like, maybe it'll be fine. And then those were, of course, the first things that she was like, yeah, why did the police do it this way? And I'm like, because I wanted them to.
Yeah.
So
I'm the writer.
Exactly, like suspend your disbelief. I don't know. So that first pass of asking questions, I think, is really important, because there will, of course, be things that you don't see, that you can't see until somebody else brings it up. But if there's things that you know are weak, everyone else is going to know them too. You can't bluff your way through it. So finding spots was kind of the first pass. And then what I found really worked well for me was reading the book out loud, and reading the book out loud almost in character. You know, Jo has a very distinctive voice, so it was very easy to kind of put her on like a role when I was trying to revise and be like, you know.
And then you could hear where it doesn't sound right.
Exactly. You can hear where it doesn't sound right. And then for me, it also came up like, oh, why isn't she thinking about this right now? You know what I mean? Like it made it more clear to me, kind of acting almost in character as her, like where spots of the manuscript didn't make sense. Like, oh, I actually think that she would be thinking about this, or I actually think she'd be doing this while she's doing this. Like it just kind of gave me a more lived in sense of her.
Right. That's good advice.
It out loud, but I've never done it like in character. I mean, I've never gone that far.
Oh yeah. Have another glass of wine.
Yeah. I was like going, I'll read your book in character. There you go.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
That's really interesting. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you saying, you know, that revision is the thing. And you don't realize that, like how much
I know. And but that's what we hear again and again, and it's great to hear different ways of approaching it, because like you said, everybody is a little different. Like you know, my weaknesses aren't the same as yours, aren't the same as Cathi, so we just have to, you know, but it's work. It's work. It's definitely work.
It is. And I think partially because some of the ways, like right now I'm working on my second book, and some of the ways that I'm convincing myself to do that in the midst of, like, you know, some pretty extreme world circumstances.
Right.
So I'm telling myself it doesn't have to be good. It just has to have something on the page. And so it's not a great draft, but then the revision is the part where, like, eventually you do have to cash that ticket. It does have to get.
And that's what everybody says, but it is hard on the first time around because you don't realize it. And then, of course, Cathi and I both are newbies. I mean, Cathi does have a master's in English or something.
Oh, wonderful.
Language arts. I don't know. She's a lot more savvy than me, but we've learned so much since we met, you know, a couple of years ago. So every time you learn a new thing, you're like, oh, gotta do another revision.
I think, speaking of difficult times, like during the pandemic, I feel like a lot of us learned, like, to acknowledge your muscle, that you can do hard things. Like we have the muscle. And I think revising is one of those hard muscles that you have to learn to kind of enjoy that or something, like,
totally,
you know.
So you're working on a new book.
Yeah.
What is that?
Now, are you already, like, did they say 2 books deal or anything like that? Well, you're going to get published. Don't worry. Because you're in Target. Come on.
I'm in Target. So
this is a Target, people.
The pinnacle.
Hey, I'm talking about the cover though. This is, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can see this sexy, sexy cover. And if you're not,
and Kathy's sexy nails with it, which
I love it.
I did get my nails done for my daughter
Isn't it?
today, but they're kind of like they change
But-
colors. So maybe
Ooh,
it's
yeah, I can see that.
did you
like green
have
and
any-
blue and purple and black.
Yeah.
Did you have any input on this, Halley? This is so good.
It's fabulous. It was designed by a woman named Erica Verbeck, and I try to drop her name as much as possible because she did such a phenomenal job. And she's a designer with Putnam. So my editor, Danielle Dietrich at Putnam's like a wonderful human. I'm lucky every day to work with her, and she made this book phenomenal. So if the book is any good, it's due to her and to Sharon and Lane. And so she asked me, do you have any preferences for covers? Like, is there anything you're really strongly drawn to? Is there anything you really don't like? And so I put together like Pinterest boards and kind of was like, here are things I really like, elements I really like. Here are things I don't love. I respect that, the cover designer they do their job for a reason, and they know what looks good on shelves. They know what looks good in different places. So there was an element of me trying to be zen about it and be like, what they bring you, if you really hate it, tell them, but like if you're just not sure about it, sit with it. And then this showed up in my inbox, the cover, and I just like burst into tears and was like, it's perfect, it's beautiful. We didn't really change much from the first pass of the cover that they sent me, except for that kind of smokiness that goes through the words of the title. That I think the only change we made to the cover. Before it was just kind of straight yellow, which would have also looked great, but I loved that kind of tied.
Oh yeah, definitely
together. Yeah.
It's a good. The story even exceeds the sexiness of the cover.
Thank you. But I do. Yeah, I love that it kind of has this kind of throwbacky 80s, 90s like neon to it while still feeling modern. I mean, I think Erica knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Yep. That's great.
Well, Halley, this has been so fun talking with you.
Yes.
We could do this all day, but I know you actually
I know.
things, and we got more wine to drink. We could do this. We'll just have to do part 2 with your next book.
Yes, definitely.
Is your next book a noir, you think, or?
It is. So it's another feminist noir, and actually it is about a woman who runs a murder bus tour here in Los Angeles.
Oh, no way.
Yes. And
that's perfect.
So when the book opens, she discovers a body at one of the stops on the tour of a young woman. And it's actually going to end up being tied to the unsolved murder of her own sister 20 years ago.
Oh.
So that's an overview.
That sounds awesome.
Premise sold.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, Christy, I know you have one last question for
Oh,
Halley.
yes. Okay. So we have this one final question that appeases all our mysterious foodies. That's what we call our listeners out there. So which of your characters would you like to share a meal with, and what would it be?
Good question. I'm going to answer it kind of sideways, which is that I would love to be in a tiki bar with Lou. Love to be in a tiki bar with Lou and hopefully eating like Hawaiian food or Chinese food or something. But I have questions for her, even though
I think
That's so funny.
drinks in the tiki bar. Did you make those up, or were they from a tiki bar you've been to?
I did make them up. But I kind of love, I mean, we could get into like the in and outs of tiki culture, which definitely has like very racist roots, but there's something really interesting that like the creativity that goes into those drinks, they're sometimes very disgusting and sometimes they're wonderful, but they're always just kind of different,
I read that description and I was like, no wonder Joe didn't want to drink that. I was like,
right. Not a drink. Yeah.
This has been awesome. Okay. So very important, Halley, if our listeners have questions about how to reach out to you or get some more information, where should they go?
They can find me on Twitter at Halley_Sutton, or you can find me on Instagram at Halley Sutton 25. Or I do actually have an author newsletter that goes out once a month, which is really just kind of me. Generally it's me recommending things like books I've read or shows or different things that like are in the crime sphere, highlighting long form articles. So those are the best places.
Awesome. That's so great.
Thank you.
Well,
And we'll, of course, have them on our website for any listeners that want to get the links or whatever.
Wonderful. And if anyone wants I should send this to you, but or maybe my publicist sent it to you, but we actually have a specific Lady Upstairs cocktail that was made just for the book. So there's
we've had that today.
Yeah, I know. I should have. I spaced. So there's a recipe in the what is it? The book club guide that's on Putnam, or I can send you the link
Okay.
to download.
We'll get it. We'll get it from Putnam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great. All right. So I guess, this has been a fun conversation, but I guess we have to go. So we're going to have to toast Halley for her huge success and
Thank
Cathi
you.
for her
Yes.
empty glass. And and we all stay healthy and
Yes.
2021. All right.
2021. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun time.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.